This is Lauren Landrum with Prima Eye Group, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get started in just a minute. I think people are kind of still trickling in here, but we can go ahead and get the ball rolling. So let me pull up my slides. Okay. So thanks for joining us. Lauren Landrum, I'm the marketing consultant for Prima Eye Group. And for those of you who don't know me, here's a little bit of background. Before joining Prima, I worked for CNN and HLN in various news and social media marketing roles. And we've been doing a series of webinars on marketing. This one's the third out of 5. It's called How to Boost Your Brand with Community Outreach. And we're also really happy to have David Friedfeld from Clear Vision Optical join us as well. He's going to be sort of in the middle of my presentation, and he'll get to give you his thoughts. And so if you do have any questions along the way, you can type those into your questions panel, and we'll just be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. So let's get going. So the intro here, a good marketing plan should include a comprehensive list of many different strategies. And if you listen to my past 2 webinars, we talked a lot about the basic marketing budget and internal marketing. But for this one, we're going to review a basic marketing strategy that you may be overlooking, and it's community outreach. So when the public sees that your practice gives back to the community in various ways, they're going to be drawn to you. When you're involved in projects and events that are not driven by profit, it really creates a good image that you care about people first. And that means that the marketing benefit can be a little more subtle, but it can also be very powerful. So let's talk about what community outreach is. It can encompass a whole lot of things, and we'll look at different definitions. So as a collection, it can be a collection of community-based programs aimed at supporting local organizations, clubs, events that help others. And you can do this by getting out in the community, face-to-face with individuals, leaders, educators, politicians. It can also be two-way communication between your practice and stakeholders to establish mutual understanding. You promote participation, involvement, you influence behaviors, attitudes, and actions. So outreach is also reaching out to people who are not using any of the services provided by your practice, and you're informing and educating them about your services. So why do you do it? Why should you reach out? I hear a lot of doctors talking about how much time it takes, and it's very nebulous because how do you measure the response? And outreach results in developing a liaison between your practice and the community. It improves community awareness, trust, and accurate understanding of your mission and success. So it increases that collaboration with the community members and potential partners. And the biggest reason for me, one of the big things just from a marketing perspective, is that it raises brand awareness. And we'll go into more detail on this later. So you can also share resources and exchange ideas. You can increase practice attendance, you can educate the community, and stimulate behavioral change. And there's some basic principles of community outreach that you'll want to understand before moving forward. First, you want to clearly identify the people you're trying to reach. Is it the elderly population, the high spenders, the low-income residents? And once you figure that out, know that one size doesn't fit all. You're going to have to tailor your outreach strategy and message to your target patients. So look at your practice from the perspective of the community. If you were them, what would you want to know? What would be helpful? If your services include CRT, the sports community could be aware of this, and that could be a really great outreach opportunity for you. And then, another point, you can, if possible, recruit some key community leaders to kind of help be your cheerleader. Remember that outreach is the combination of materials plus personal contact in multiple ways and multiple times. And over time, you build that trust and become a familiar face. And I say this all the time, but that face-to-face encounter with community outreach is going to be so much more powerful than somebody just seeing your ad in a magazine. Ads are great and they have their purpose, but when you make that personal connection, it's going to stick with someone. And then another principle here, and we'll talk about this later, but you want to create a system and a schedule for your outreach. and this is a key for ongoing success. Now, here's one thing, sort of a side note. A lot of members have expressed frustrations with trying to capture the younger generation, millennials. Because a lot of times, millennials are after the deal, and the price is the important factor in making a purchase decision. But really, you want to consider another important factor. Millennials have a strong desire to do business with companies that make a difference in the world because it makes them feel good. So think about brands like Tom's and even Warby Parker. Those profits are tied to a good cause. So, I mean, for example, every pair of frames that Warby Parker sells, they give away another pair to people in need. And they've donated over 1 million pairs of glasses, and they plaster that sentence everywhere in their marketing. They hang their hat there, and it's very much tied into their brand. So, you know, you can make that a part of your marketing too in a smaller way. So now I want to take a step back and sort of boil it down to the essentials. At the end of the day, what are the goals for community outreach? Number one, you want to enhance community awareness, and you want to increase the visibility of your practice, broaden community support, engage new partners or potential referrals, and improve the knowledge and attitudes of eye health. Now let's talk a little bit about the various options you have for community outreach. And I'll cover some of the main ones, but really the sky is the limit here. I mean, you should always be thinking outside the box, and don't be afraid to get creative with your involvement. It's really up to you to do the research and legwork for what works in your community. And, you know, I can give you ideas, but I don't live in your town, so I'll never have as clear of a picture as you do for what's going to resonate. And then once I go through my list, we're going to have David Friedfeld join us for his ideas. Okay, community outreach events usually don't require too much expense. Now, there may be a sponsorship or a donation registration fee, but usually the contribution is mostly time and effort. And, you know, I hear from a lot of you that the reason you haven't gotten involved is because you feel like you don't have the time. But it is so important that you find a way to devote some resources here, even if it feels like you're stretched thin. And, you know, this usually requires some time from the doctor and the staff. So you'll have to consider how much time each person can really devote to these events per month. And if an event requires staff to participate outside of normal business hours, you know, you could consider giving some comp time off in exchange. But it's important that you sit down and plan out how you want to budget your time here as part of your marketing plan. So one idea, just to get started, the local Chamber of Commerce, it's a great starting ground because it focuses on all kinds of events in the town. You're going to meet other business leaders, share ideas on what they've done for their businesses, and they often sponsor events for the public that can showcase your practice. You know, you're going to have to pay the dues and become a member, but if you're active, it's really worth it. And then look into other civic groups. Some of our members tell me that Lions Club and Rotary Club have yielded good results. It really builds your network of local leaders. Those are also great patients and referral sources, but always remember to approach these clubs with the attitude of how you can help others, not how to attract business. It's going to make you look a lot better. So the main thing to keep in mind is networking and being in the know is the best way to have a good shot at making community outreach work for you. So then ask yourself, what issues are important to you? It could be anything from animal rights, caring for the elderly, homelessness. You know, sit down and come up with a list of the things that you care about, and then find a way to get involved and give back to those things. And you don't have to support a national charity organization. A lot of times there are plenty of local options available. You know, you can partner with a charity for a trunk show. You know, it helps kind of raise that feeling of, oh, people know that the money's going to a good cause, so they might be more likely to spend. And you could also look into setting up a canned food drive or a toy drive for kids during holidays. I know several of our members have gone on mission trips to other countries in order to provide for those who don't have immediate access to eye care. And so when you participate in something like this, make sure to take lots of pictures, maybe even write a journal of your experience. This is great stuff to put on social media and your website. And this is the kind of stuff that does boost your brand. Also, keep up with your city or neighborhood to learn about events that will be hosted, often through the Parks Department. They're going to have fairs and parades and educational programs. So your practice could set up a booth, have staff there talk about eye care, give away your practice brochures, little gifts, and maybe do some vision screenings. And you also probably get approached from different clubs and groups asking if you can sponsor them. And a lot of times you should say yes. You'll probably get your practice logo and some signs and T-shirts, maybe get your name in some programs. And you can also find out what your patients are into. So if Timmy plays Little League Baseball and Sarah is singing in All-State Choir, offer to be a sponsor, and that really means a lot. And even, things like high school speech and debate clubs will need sponsors. And a lot of organizations have fundraising events like silent auctions and raffles, and these can be great. Sometimes you'll have to say no, but consider donating a pair of sunglasses and, play up the marketing value by placing the sunglasses encased in the basket with lots of extras, a pretty bow, some tissue paper, your business cards, and, for the presentation, throw in some sunblock if you're doing a summer theme. Just get creative with it. Okay, so now I'd like to introduce our guest presenter, David Friedfeld, and he's the president of Clear Vision Optical, and they're, of course, one of Prima's vendor partners, so be sure to talk to our vendor specialist, Rachel Dornbos, if you haven't signed up with their programs. And I think it's really important for Prima members to hear about community outreach from a vendor perspective, and so David is going to talk to you about that, and he'll probably emphasize some of my points as well. David, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. I'm actually going to go ahead and switch the screen over to you so you can have the floor here and let me know if everything is good on your end.
Lauren, if you can hear me, it looks like the screen is on my end. Are we good to go?
Excellent. Yes, I can hear you. I can see everything fine.
Okay, perfect. Well, Lauren, thanks a bunch. And as as Lauren said, I'm Dave Friedfeld, president of Clear Vision Optical. I want to just put a small plug in there for Prima and this webinar series. In fact, I think it's very, very important for people to look for ideas throughout the year, look to see what they can do, look to do things differently. I got involved in speaking to the ECPs in the last number of years after taking about a 15-year hiatus, and I speak on various topics. This particular one, community outreach, I developed about 3 or 4 years ago in speaking to some optometrists. So it was a very, very good experience for me. But the best experience is when I come back, let's say a year later, to the same event, and an OD comes up to me or an optometric tech or an optician or whatever, and they say, Dave, last year I heard you talk about different topics, and we implemented a couple of those things, and our results were very, very good. So for me, it's not only the idea that we're going to talk about, it's the execution. So what I would ask, we have about 20 things we'll talk about. What I would ask everybody out there to do is if one or two of the ideas sounds good to you, or if you like the idea a lot, just implement those one or two. You don't have to do all 20. And some of them you might be doing already. Okay? So that's how I look at it. And again, if there's any questions that come in, my understanding is you can type those questions, and Lauren will let me know where those questions are. We can get back to you. And if anyone wanted to contact me after the event for any reason whatsoever to get more detail, my email address is D like David, Friedfeld, like you can see right up there on the screen, and at cvoptical.com, lowercase c, lowercase v, optical, all one word. D. Friedfeld at cvoptical.com. Okay. It works good. Oh my God, I love this. Great. So if somebody put up their radio, newspaper, magazine, and Lauren said, and I'm going to say most of what we're going to do here is either low cost or no cost, the first thing that somebody might say is, hey, wait a second, I don't have the money for a radio, newspaper, magazine. But I would say you do have the imagination. So the most important things you can do, especially in small towns across America, bigger towns and large cities are tough, but small towns, which most of us live in, it's very, very easy to get related to the media, whether it is the radio or the newspaper or the magazine or any kind of bloggers. It's very, very easy to make that connection. What I mean by easy is you just have to do it. Make that connection. Become the expert in your community, and that's very, very important. As part of that, you'll get PSAs, public service announcements, radio, that's free airtime. Any kind of editorials you could be mentioned in. Any kind of professional writing you can be mentioned in. Or when it comes to like local fashion magazines, They'll be happy to understand from you the latest and greatest in back to school or summer or anything like that. So the radio, newspaper, and magazine doesn't have to be expensive. Low cost or no cost. Okay. Next slide should be coming. Chamber of Commerce. Okay. Now the Chamber of Commerce, and again, in some communities, very, very important. In other communities, less. But I like to look at this as a great way of networking. You can promote your business there. You can gain referrals there. You can network various opportunities within your community. You can also gain a lot of knowledge and support from other local business leaders. And then ultimately, most chambers have professional development training programs for you and your staff. This is a great way of outreach in the community and gaining a lot of exposure in the community. Different than the chamber is the networking events. So when someone says, well, Dave, what's the difference between a chamber and a networking? Because don't I network at the chamber? And the answer is yes. But a lot of communities have breakfast clubs or after-hours clubs, business clubs, where you can network there. And these particular networking organizations exist and basically either low cost or no cost. So the question is, what is the benefit of such a group? Again, you can exchange leads with the contacts you meet there. So what we're looking to do, our particular view at Clear Vision, is that you can build your practice one person at a time. And we understand that managed care will drive people in. We understand that your dispensary will drive people in. We understand that the service you provide, both professionally and on the eyewear side, will drive people in. But there's also what we're talking about is this community outreach, reaching out into the community to gain business outside of those things that normally exist. So this one, business networking, you can establish yourself as an expert in any of these networking groups for the eye care and eyewear community. And also you can consider presenting at any of these local events. Many times they'll have an opportunity to present. So you gain exposure for yourself to be top of mind whenever someone's looking for an ECP. Now, in a fundraiser sense, a lot of people attend fundraisers. You can see this is what's typically called, I think they call this a Chinese auction, but it may be a different type of auction. People donate products or services, and this can get your name out in the community. What we often do, and what you can easily do, take a couple of pairs of sunglasses and a couple of other things, and you donate that. There's going to be a slide later on. We talk a little bit about co-op, and what I would advise everybody here, regardless of whether you take co-op from your vendors, regardless of whether you do, I would say in almost every case, your vendor will be able to give you those 2-3 pairs of sunglasses for free. Assuming you do any kind of business with the vendor, they'll be happy to do it. I'm sure your local lab will donate the services if you're going to do prescription eyewear. So it's very, very important so that it doesn't cost you much to get your vendors to participate. Local philanthropy is a little bit different than the information we just went over on the previous slide. This would be considering more about any kind of services that are provided for eye care for the needy, let's say, for example. Or it might be something that happens in your town on a regular basis. Or it may be you collect old glasses for your patients, donate them, or from your patients rather, and donate them to a local organization. Your practice, I've seen this a couple of times, can be a drop-off site for a local food pantry. So, for example, it's coming up to be Thanksgiving now. I know that there will be I've seen this in certain ECP practices, where the doctor will say, during the month of November, if you bring some canned food in and so forth and so on, we're going to make the donation to the local food bank, and we're going to give you 5% off on your eyewear or something to that effect. So it really is a feel-good both ways. People, and Lauren mentioned this, people like to do business with people who do good, and that's one of the biggest social movements in our country today. So your community and your customers will definitely take notice and thank you for doing what you do and choose to do business with you over somebody else who's not really involved in the community in this way. I think a great and often untapped area of getting your name out in the community is working with local schools and summer camps. I spoke at an optician's event the other night, and I asked people by a raise of hands how many people do this. There was about 50 practices in the room, and virtually everyone didn't raise their hand. I'd seen about 3 or 4 people that raised their hand. I think it's imperative, actually, if you want to start a kids business, it's very easy to get over to the school and introduce yourself as a professional. Ask if they have a career day, or ask if there's opportunities for professionals to come into the school and speak, and establish yourself as that expert in the community. I'm reminded of a practice in Allentown, Pennsylvania, almost 20 years ago, that's all they did in August and September. Go around to do career days and school screenings. Very, very important. It's also easy to get onto a PTA newsletter that way, too. The same thing is true for summer camps. A lot of summer camps stress athletics, and it's important that, especially if there's children coming from towns that are not local. So let's just say you're in Atlanta and you have, or rather your camp is in Atlanta, and kids might be coming from North Carolina, Florida, South Carolina, etc. They don't have the ability to go back home, let's say, and spend some time with the optometrist. So it has to be a local optometrist, whether it's for contact lenses, broken glasses, any kind of injury, something like that. There needs to be a doctor local. So I would say, again, make yourself available to the summer camps. It's free marketing and establishes you as the go-to practice in that town throughout the year. Now, there's also another opportunity. This you can see looks like to be a bookstore, but there's a lot of opportunity, whether it's the bookstore, whether it's a geriatric center, whether it's a library, et cetera, for any type of public lectures. So many places hold, whether it's monthly or quarterly, lectures on health. The easiest way to get your name out in the community and often tie up some of the business is to put yourself out again as an expert and to do these public services by talking about eye disease, eye health, or the latest and greatest in lenses, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You also can invite vendors to participate, and there might be a giveaway that night, which will also draw more people to that public lecture. Advertising and sponsorship. So again, somebody might say, well, gee, Dave, you said low cost, no cost. That looks like it costs me some money. But I would say in many cases, it could be virtually free. No, again, not free, but virtually free. So what's a good idea of a virtually free? Well, there are some welcome services in many towns. And since the population of the states changes in a particular town somewhere between 10 and 20% a year, so in your local community, people are moving out. There's 100 homes, 10 to 20 are changing every year. All right? So these welcome services include a postcard with your practice contact, as well as perhaps a special discount. Some of these are businesses that will charge something very, very small, but in many cases it happens to be a free service from the community, sometimes from the Chamber of Commerce as well. So there's very, very important as people move into your community to let them know that you are the eye doctor or eye professional in town. You also can sponsor local events such as races, charity events, so forth and so on. Contests, if there was some kind of like July 4th pie eating contest, you could sponsor that too. And oftentimes the vendors that you work with can help you out. So again, low cost, no cost are good opportunities for advertising and sponsorships. Branding is something that I think is pretty cool. I think it's underutilized in a lot of places. You can see some pictures here of a car, and you can see obviously there's some version of a uniform for this group. So let's talk a little bit about this car idea. Somebody might say, I really don't want to drive around town in my very expensive Lexus with the name of my practice here. Dr. Jerry Hayes or Dr. Neil Galmard, who are the co-founders of Prima, might not be driving around town in this particular car, but probably could get a small used car that could be used for the optical shop. And then when they're running errands around town, certainly can drive this. Or, maybe Jerry would have one of his kids in high school driving this. Of course, the kid would not want to drive back and forth to school, but Jerry's a good salesperson. He might be able to encourage his young son, Nathan, to do that. But my sister's laughing as I said that. But the point I'm making is there's ways to get your name out in the community. That just happens to be one way. I also like the idea of uniforms. This you could see is a very casual uniform. So the guys are all wearing a certain blue shirt. The gals are wearing a blue dress or skirt. And that certainly works when they're in store. But when they're around town, when they go out for lunch, when they go for breakfast, when they go out afterwards, it's virtual advertising as well. So low cost, no cost ways to brand your office. Meet and greets are great, a little bit different than trunk shows. We'll talk about trunk shows as well. But the meet and greets are wonderful. And one of the ones I like the best is Customer Appreciation Night. So my optometrist, about 2 years ago, I started to get emails. Everyone, if you don't collect email addresses, if you're not doing Facebook, I would say I would encourage that a lot. I would encourage that a lot because there's a very big social movement in the community, and I can't guarantee that every email that you send or every post that you on Facebook will be looked at by every one of your vendors, or customers or patients. But I can say that there's a good majority of people that do check social media on a daily basis. So you have your email. You can send out Customer Appreciation Night. I like that a lot. It's not a trunk show. It's just a monthly reminder to your patients on a particular night that you're open late. So my optometrist is open late on a Thursday night, once a month. That late might be up to 9:30. Certainly you can come there for the services, but as you can see, this particular event, it's more about people having fun. So my optometrist will sponsor a particular frame line that night, and he'll say something like, there's 25% off on all Versace sunglasses tonight. There's wine and cheese being served. Please come down. I assume that he's not having too much wine and cheese when he's doing the exams, but it's more of a friendly night, and I like that a lot. I like the idea of hosting your practice, having people come in, learning where your location is. You can do fashion night. That's a wonderful night too. And certainly a great way to have people come in, especially if they bring a friend. All right, especially if they bring a friend. Now, trunk shows, which many of you are very, very familiar with, my opinion is that they're really underutilized a lot because most ECPs don't have a theme, don't have a way of doing it, and oftentimes they leave a lot of the trunk show on the shoulders of the vendor who's going to participate. And I don't think that's a very, very good idea. Again, for anybody that wants a really good system on trunk shows, you can email me or contact Lauren, and I'll get it to you. But we have some really good ideas, and we have a white paper on how to do a trunk show. But primarily, it's something that starts, at least 12 weeks out, maybe 16 weeks out, and then there's a countdown what you have to do each week. A trunk show can be a really effective way of gaining business. I think what we have to look at, though, is what is our goal for that day. So I have seen trunk shows that are extremely successful where there's more than $30,000 of business done in one day. And for the average practice, that would be a huge amount of business. And there's actually trunk shows that I visited that do even more. So there's ways to do that, and there's ways to get that kind of traffic through your business. Imagine holding a trunk show on Black Friday after Thanksgiving. It's a huge shopping day. Everyone's off. And imagine doing that on that day, what kind of traffic you can have if you do a good job. Why would we have a trunk show? It's a great way to show off new products. It's an innovative way to promote your practice and, have your existing customers come in, plus new customers. And it, can generate a lot of buzz about any of the new technology or any kind of designer brands that you're featuring. So I like trunk shows as a way of reaching out into the community. I talked a little bit about co-op from vendors. I talked about asking your vendors to help participate. I think, again, this is one of the areas which is very underutilized from the ECP community. Now, I was at this event the other night with the opticians. I asked how many people use the co-op, and many of the people that were there, many of the practices explained to me that they're either confused by co-op policies or they feel that the vendors have cut back. And I explained that I understand that, and I agree. Many of the vendors make co-op difficult to use, or they restrict it in many, many ways. The average co-op policy is about 5% of net sales with a vendor. If the average practice, which we know the average practice does, let's say $600,000 for an optometric practice, the purchases from vendors would be close to 30% of that. 30% of that's about $180,000 5% of that is $9,000. So what the pool is $9,000. Now it's just a question of how are you going to get that pool. I believe that everybody should be sitting down with their vendor the last quarter of the year. So, October, November, December, talking about what their plans are for next year in co-op, understanding what the co-op policies are, and also asking in general what the company can offer in addition to the service or the product that they're already selling. That kind of discussion should happen on an annual basis. And what you'll find is many companies have a lot of, whether it's co-op or other sponsorship activities, that you can take advantage of. So this is a way of gaining from the vendors. And as you can see in this particular case, Holland Optical is promoting Ray-Ban. And this happens to be an advertisement that's going to be paid for by Ray-Ban. Very, 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 very good and effective way of talking to the community. Now, email and newsletters. I mentioned that email is something that you should be gaining from our customers. If you're not doing that, again, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. Very, very easy to put together a newsletter. Many of your vendors have standard newsletters. If you do business with Essilor, for example, they're an easy outfit to get templates from. The AOA has a lot of templated information. You can also create information for yourself, and you wouldn't have to only print it. So I like sending newsletters via email. Again, will they all get read? No. But the email is free and the template is free, and putting together the information, anybody in your practice can do that. So join a mailing list. The typical OD practice is going to have anywhere from 4,000 to 16,000 active patient base. So imagine your email going out once a month or once a quarter or twice a year. They're going to be reaching all of your patients, all of your customers on a regular basis. So I think it's important to get that. You can send special offers for birthdays or holidays. I think that was a great suggestion. Again, at the conference I was at the other day, one of the ECD practices explained to me that on every single birthday, the practice sent out a birthday email and a birthday card to the individual. I thought that was a great way of building relationships. Newsletters are also a fantastic piece of information for the organization. Not hard to put together, as I mentioned. You also can put something on, you can put pictures in there that are very, very easy to take in your office to let people know that you had a fun time at Halloween or a fun time at Christmas or whatever else it is, and people relate to that. So I think, email, very, very inexpensive way of talking to your community and getting people in your practice. Facebook, virtually the same. So very, very important to look at Facebook as a way of communicating with your customer base. Lots of people are checking their Facebook throughout the day. There's also a way to boost your Facebook following, and there's some explanation right here. But again, if you want some more information about that, I'm happy to help you out. Typically it may cost a little bit of money, but that's all it will do. For as little as $1, a post that you would put out there is going to reach hundreds more people than you normally would reach. So very, very important to look at Facebook as a way of communicating with the community out there. YouTube, right here we normally would have a clip that would play, but we don't have the ability to play that YouTube. What I would recommend is you go to YouTube anytime during the day, today, and hopefully your office manager will let you do that because it would be considered education. But just go there for YouTube and put in the word optometrist, put in the word optician, eye care professional, frame, designer frame, sunglass, and you'll see loads of great, great YouTube. In this particular case, Amy is welcoming people to the dispensary. She talks about the different ways that face shapes are determined. She talks about certain of the fitting of a certain frame. She talks about new frames that are coming into the practice, and that's posted on her own website for the office, as well as she can blast it out to people. So I love YouTube. It's very, very inexpensive. All it takes is a camera phone, and you're on your way. You can post it. Very, very good way of reaching the community. And once you post on YouTube, like we've done this, you'll be very surprised what the hits are. You get a lot of hits, and the person might say, "What's the big deal with that?" Well, you know what? If 2 or 3 of those hits out of the 300 or 400 that people visit, if 2 or 3 come into your practice, and that's what we're talking about, building your practice one person at a time, then you've got a new patient, that new patient is going to be new referrals. This is one of the ones I like the best. This is an idea I picked up from an optometrist when I was traveling. It's a friends and family card, all right? So basically this is a referral. We look forward to meeting you, put the name in there, the name of the friend who referred you to the office, and you're on your way. You can give this to every single patient after every single patient experience in your office. You can give this to your staff as they travel around if they see anybody that they like. If they see really great service at a restaurant, they can hand this out. And the way it typically gets done is when the card is presented and a new patient comes in, they will get some version of a discount. And the person who is recommending it, the name of the friend who referred you to the office, that person also gets a benefit as well. This is about the easiest and least expensive way of getting people into your practice. Because if you gave this to people, to the 3,000 or 4,000 people that you're going to see per year, and again, most practices will see more, can you imagine what happens when those get turned in? Very, very powerful. Okay, we're just about done. I think we have a couple more slides. This last one talks about partnering with local businesses. You can identify potential partners and cross-promote with other local businesses in your community. You can provide a special offer, vice versa. Now, someone might say, I don't really want to promote with the Okinawa, Japanese restaurant or the Subway, over there. But this is just, there are many, many opportunities to do this. This particular example, you might say, gee, I don't want to be doing that way. But if there's a pediatrician in the neighborhood, if you're in a professional building, there's a lot of ways that you can partner up with other businesses so you can get cross-promotion going, and very, very inexpensive. One of the other things that I think is very important in the local community, most of us live in some version of a small town. So, it could be a small town in Nebraska with only 1,000 people, or it could be a small town in Long Island with 30,000 people. But if you shop local, if you are local, if you keep your jobs local, and you're active in the community, what I find is that most people also will pay you back the same way. I'm not against the big box, so I don't want anyone to hear it that way. But what I am saying is if you shop local and people understand you're local, it's a great way of having that kind of local advertising. I think this is the last slide, be in it to win it. So in a lot of towns, there's all sorts of contests for small business. It could be, best company to work for. It could be new company to work for when you go new to town. It could be growing businesses. All sorts of communities have little business awards. And I believe that if you enter those contests and you win, it also is great local advertising. And oftentimes if there's any kind of judging going on rather than just a popularity contest, it's a wonderful thing that you can say, our company, our practice won an award last year, and you can post that inside your office too. So I think that's a very, very important way to get your name out in the community. That's me. So I think I did pretty good. I had about 20 minutes, but if you want to contact me any way, shape, or form, dfriedfeld@cvoptical.com. LinkedIn, I like visiting there a couple times a week. It's also a great way to do business, by the way. I have a Twitter account, which I love. Most people don't have that in business. It's but something I like following. And Instagram, which is a very, very powerful one, too, for the virtual. Lauren, that's it for me, so I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has, or if you want to ask me anything about anything I said, I'd be happy to address that. I'm done. Thank you very much, and again, happy to address anything.
David, thank you so much. I think you covered so much that a lot of times, you don't think about some of those things being as relevant to community outreach, but it all ties in. It all ties back in. So I appreciate you touching on a wide variety of things that make sense for community outreach. And I'm actually going to re-emphasize some of your points, especially the ones about the media and getting some of that essentially free PR. So I think that was great input. Hope you'll stick around so at the end of my presentation in a few minutes we can get to potentially some questions if any of our members have any questions afterwards. So we're going to continue on, and we've talked about a whole bunch of different types of community outreach. So the question then becomes, how do you do it? How do you create a plan, and how do you put these ideas into action? And that is the hard part. So first, I really can't stress enough that a big part of community outreach planning means research. And even though we've just talked about a bunch of ideas, you know, as both David and I have said, things that work in one town may not necessarily work in the next town. So this is why it's crucial that you start to network, get involved, and know your own community. So, you know, I think that, you know, maybe there's an annual parade or a 5K or a golf tournament, something that's unique to your town. Those are the things that take time and effort for you to seek out on your own. So I just recommend that you sit down with your friends and family and staff and have a brainstorming session. And that planning process should be a fun, collaborative effort. So talk about what your goals and objectives are. You know, are you trying to increase your brand awareness? Do you want to partner with another company like David was just talking about, another local business? You know, figure out what some key messages you want to put out. What are the key messages that you want to put out there for your practice? So the next step is going to be development. Once you've researched and brainstormed your ideas, at that point, you'll want to come up with some structure for implementation. So maybe you create a 12-month calendar where you can list events and actions for each month. And if you're starting off small, you know, maybe just aim for 2 big events per year. If you're new to this, you don't want to get overwhelmed, so just commit to doing 2 things for the year and then maybe some smaller actions in between. And your goal would be to increase those numbers by the next year and always leave room for adjustment. So if it's September and someone asks you to sponsor their church group, you don't have to say no. You've left in some room for different ideas to come into play. And then, of course, the third step is execution. The hard part, you've just got to do it. So use all that planning and development that you have put forth. Use that calendar or structure as a reference and hold yourself accountable for the events and actions that you've planned. And again, you want to leave room for those adjustments and anything that may come up. Finally, you'll want to constantly evaluate your outreach efforts, just like you evaluate your overall marketing plan. And this is going to be a piece of it. So you probably won't be able to see those tangible results in terms of dollar amounts and new patients for a lot of your community outreach efforts, but you will have a sense of what is just a plain bad experience. And, you know, if something like that happens, you can write that off for next year and replace it with something new. Because so much about marketing is trial and error, finding out what works for you. And you can really think of community outreach in a sense of like brand advertising. So it's just like if you were to put up a billboard that just says, here's who we are and what we do, that's a type of brand advertising, and you don't expect to always see a very solid return from that. It serves its own purpose, and that it is building your brand and continuing to solidify you as a great leader, a great business, a great practice in the community. So in the midst of all of this outreach, there are some tools that you'll want to have in your pocket. And, you know, I'm going to piggyback off of what David just preached about going for that free coverage with press contacts in your area. This is really a huge opportunity that you should not overlook. So coming from a news background, I know how often local reporters are looking for a nice human interest story to cover. So work that angle. You know, you're going to need a communications plan or a press kit to do this. And this would be just like a musician who has their press kit ready in case someone wants to book them. You would use this if you were contacted by a member of the press. You can use this if you are approaching another business or charity about a potential partnership. It's a really great thing to have, and it can include a lot of different things. A media package, and that would be any press coverage you've received in the past, and including if you've done like a radio show or some kind of, you know, educational piece on air. Press releases. Now, you should be writing these and sending them to local news outlets whenever you are doing anything newsworthy in your practice, but most certainly for these community outreach events. And if you need help writing these, let me know, and I'll help you get started. I actually have a document that sort of goes over how to write a press release so that the agencies, the news outlets will take notice, and I'll send that to all of you who attended in a follow-up email today. Newsletters, you also can throw the quarterly newsletters in there, so anything that you want people to see what you've been doing, what you're about. Also include things like flyers, brochures, any public service announcement type things that you've done on eye care in the past. And finally, I just want to again stress the impact that community outreach can have on your practice. One Prima member I consulted with told me about the practice's background. And she said that when they first started, they decided that they would devote all of their marketing resources to outreach efforts in the community because they didn't have a budget. They were just starting out. So they said, well, we're going to just throw it all into community outreach. They didn't do any advertising or anything like that. Well, she said it really started taking off. It was uncanny how quickly word spread. She said it took off faster than any other startup she had ever seen or worked in, and they continue to stay involved in the community, and they are a very well-established and successful practice in their area. And I also talked to another member recently who had great success with community outreach, and I asked the office manager for her general outlook on community service and marketing, and she said, if you have a business that benefits from the community, you should support it. And she said, I think our reputation as one of a strong community supporter, and it works for us in multiple ways. We view ourselves as our biggest competitor. So instead of comparing themselves to other practices nearby, they're always trying to outdo themselves, and they shine in community outreach because they make it a part of their routine. It's a commitment, but it's worthwhile. So that wraps up my part of the presentation on community outreach. And I know that I've talked to a lot of you already, but for those of you who want to talk and brainstorm about making outreach part of the marketing plan, please email me or call me. I'll be happy to talk to you and help you get things going, because implementation is the hardest part. So if nothing else, I can be a cheerleader if you need it. So thank you so much for attending. David and I are going to stick around for a second to answer questions. If any of you guys should have them, go ahead and type some of those into the questions panel now. Start fire away. And also, just so you guys know, this webinar has been recorded, so we're going to put it up on the member resources section of our website sometime in the next couple of days. So if you missed any part of it, it'll be there forever and ever. So there we go. And David, are you still sticking around here?
Not only am I sticking around, I'm waiting for one question from anybody. Even if someone says, like, what kind of shirt are you wearing today? Because I'm wearing a superhero shirt. So just anything.
Oh, that's awesome. What kind of superhero shirt? That's my question.
Superman shirt, because today was Superhero Day at Clear Vision, and everybody in the company came in with the superhero shirt. And if you came in with wearing the superhero shirt, you got a free get out of work pass for 2 hours.
Wow. I want to get that deal.
Yes, and you have to wear a superhero shirt. My
that
sister
is
great one. It's like 20 superheroes on it.
That is great.
Yes. No questions today. No questions.
Wait, we have, okay, Lexi Henry just sent one, and she said, would you please email me the list of ideas for a great trunk show? And that was directed to you, David. So,
perfect. So, I'll tell you what we'll do, Lauren, make it easy. I'll send you that, or my sister will send the list over to you, and anybody on the call today that wants it, including that one practice, we can get that to them. And if they want to get more information, just like you said, that you can act as a cheerleader, we have an in-house marketing group that can help anybody. If you're a Prima member, that's great. Whether they do business with Clear Vision or not important.
That's great. That's really interesting. And just in general for trunk shows, I know you touched on it, David, but, is there, when it comes to the vendor perspective of setting those up, what do you guys, just as a general rule of thumb, what do you say is the best timeline that you feel comfortable working with a practice?
Well, I think the ones that, I'll give you an example of what doesn't work, and then we can talk about what works. Okay.
Okay.
So what doesn't work is when we get a call from the salesperson and they say, Dr. Lauren's practice is having a trunk show next week. Can you send, because we have a special kit that we send, can you send this trunk show kit? And I think to myself, why are we getting bothered a week before? That's ridiculous. So typically, on the flip side, when I get a call from the sales rep that says, Twin Tiers in upstate New York is going to be doing a trunk show, their annual trunk show, the day before, this particular day or that weekend of a holiday, and we need to prepare for that, we have a timeline that we can work off of. So typically, that's the information I'll send you. So I would say the more prepared somebody is as if they were wanting to have a really good event. And you can't do that in, a month. It doesn't work that way because what will happen is no customers show up.
Right.
They don't show up. What you want to make sure is that there's, 30, 40, 50, 60 people coming that day, and you want them to bring, if they can, their, friends and family, because that's where you're going to get the extra business that particular day. So a week or two before, forget about it. A month before, forget about it. No. I would say anywhere from 8 weeks out is the earliest I'd want to plan a trunk show.
Okay, and that's kind of the standard that I've heard too. I just wanted to get your take on that, and that's what I try to tell practices too. You even if there was a vendor willing to work with you with a smaller time frame out there, why would you want to? Because it's just not going to be as effective. You're not going to have nearly the amount of time to plan a successful show, to market the all your resources. It's just going to get cut short. So even if you think you've got a really good idea coming up, if it's only 5-6 weeks away, just go ahead and forget about it. So, okay, good. I like that feedback. So we don't have any other questions coming through. So unless somebody I spoke too soon. Here we go. Hang on. This is from Janine McCleary. Okay. She says, what do you think about targeting a specific demographic in your practice and present along with another specialty doctor, such as an OBGYN, dry eye, and other dry parts, or allergist to do an evening event? Okay. So targeting a specific demo. Go ahead, David.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, that's a great idea. And I think the particular example that was just given is a perfect one because I understand why you'd want to bring together those three professionals. Mm-hmm. Because you're talking about a condition that will touch on those three practices. Obviously, each practice would bring something to the party, different patient base. I think it's a unique way of approaching eye care and medicine generally, and that would work very well whether it's at, again, if there's a library event or a bookstore event or any kind of, and I don't want to say geriatric, but any kind of community center, YMCA, YMHA. There's so many places where that would work. I like the idea a lot.
I do too, and I think that also, just as a general rule, you're going to create more networking opportunities with those doctors and referrals potentially coming up. So I think overall that is going to be a really interesting and unique take on having some kind of evening event. That's great. Okay, now we have another question. Dr. Harrison says, let's get specific. Suppose you are supporting a local 5K. What form might that support take? Okay, so I've seen a few things. Sometimes with 5Ks or races, local events, you need sponsors. So sponsors may donate, say, a certain portion of money to, help support the volunteers and the people who are there. And in that case, your name may get put on some of the race T-shirts. It could get put on signs that are up along the way, just depending on what that particular race does to incorporate their sponsors. Your name could get out there. I've also seen different practices get involved where maybe they are the volunteers. Maybe they are the ones standing out there with their practice T-shirts on. They're handing out water bottles to the runners along the way. They're supporting in that way. And I mean, just recently, we actually, Prima did a 5K where we did our branded shirts and showed up to the 5K, and you're actually just running to support the cause. And, that's a good way to get out there and network. And for practices in particular, that's even more effective than what Prima did as a company because of the type of company and outreach that you guys are putting forth. That's a good way to meet other people, get your name out there. So those are a few of the examples that I would use for something like a 5K.
Lauren, you covered that very well. I wouldn't add anything in particular to that, but I would say probably the best way to be involved is not only doing what you did, but doing it for the first time. So obviously, any time you get involved is a learning experience. You'll learn afterwards you did 2 or 3 things right, one or two, three things you can improve. You'll also meet a lot of people at a local event like that. So you gave a very good answer.
Okay, thanks. Great. And let's see, we have another one from Lexi. She says, how often do you recommend doing a customer appreciation day or night? Do you think a customer appreciation night would be successful once a quarter or once a month? I think it all depends on how you market it and how you set it up. If you're, a lot of times I see practices doing customer appreciation sales, and so it's only for, existing patients. But events could be a different thing, and that could incorporate a lot of different, types of, do you have refreshments? Do you have prizes that you're giving away? What kinds of things are you actually doing? And in that case, if you're making it a big event, then maybe the night, would be a successful time to do it, get more people out there, market it a little more heavily, kind of like you would a trunk show. And then once a quarter versus once a month, I think I'm going to lean toward once a quarter. And that's just because I don't want the patients to feel oversaturated, because if you start doing it once a month, you're probably going to start seeing some decline in attendance, and it may not be as effective. I think once a quarter is a good time frame for something like that, especially if you are making it a big event. That's my take.
I would agree with you. Once a quarter is fine. As I mentioned, my optometrist does it once a month, but it may be that, and again, I have to be honest, I've not attended it, but I like it a lot. I like the idea. He does a wine and cheese, so it's probably more of a social event, and, I haven't asked him if it is or isn't successful, but my guess is that it is. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing it. You also can do it literally once. You can do it on Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, and Father's Day, and it would be a wonderful thing too, or in and around that week. So I think it just depends on your practice. Again, for me, I believe that these events work a lot, because I do believe that people do business with people they like and people they trust. And it's just another way for you interacting in the community.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay, so last time I said we don't have any more questions. I had to put my foot in my mouth because one came through. But I am not seeing any more in the queue right now. So unless somebody wants to fire another one out there last minute, then I guess we can go ahead and wrap up. And I really appreciate everyone taking time out of their day to come attend the webinar. David, thank you so much for being a part of this. You really added so much value, and we hope that we can do this again. Very big help for our members. And everyone who attended, as I said, I'll send out some info on the press release, and David is going to send that trunk show info to me, so we'll get all that squared away. So thanks so much, David. Hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks a bunch. Have a great day, too. Good weekend.
Okay. All right, you too. Okay.